Hey guys, welcome to Sedona, Arizona. This is my good friend Bryan Schroeder, and this is the view outside of his home, from one of his homes from Sedona, Arizona. Good to have you. Good to hang out with you, Bryan.
It is awesome, isn't it?
It
We just
is.
had a fabulous lunch along Oak Creek in Sedona, Arizona. Man, life is good.
I don't think it gets a whole lot better than this. I
Yes.
mean, this is a place that we both love very much. It feels good to be out here. Feels good to be together.
Yes.
You good people in a beautiful place. Sedona, Arizona is magical. There's so much positive energy out here, and there's so many aware and conscious people and people on the spiritual path, and it's just a magical place. And thanks for having me in your home, man. This is your home.
Thanks for coming and visiting it. This home is welcoming you today and all of our podcast guests. Isn't that fun?
Yeah, and I talked with Bryan a little bit about there will be future retreats here at his house, and we're gonna get his house. We're gonna rent his space and bring some of our people here. So it's gonna be a lot of fun. Bryan, today I wanted to bring you back on. You were originally on episode 3 of this podcast. And that episode title was From Disengaged Aerospace Engineer to Powerful Real Estate Magnate. And in that episode, which again, episode 3, we focused a lot on your success, your material success, and your material wealth, and your material well-being. And although you have a lot of that, and amazing net worth and great wealth and the ability to buy multiple vacation rentals in a place outside of your hometown. You've got a large portfolio of rentals and a lot of real estate holdings back in St. Louis, Missouri, where we're both kind of from. But you're also venturing outside and you're doing awesome things in Sedona. And you can't do that without wealth, right, in the world. So not only do you have all that, but you've got this amazing spiritual journey that you've been on, this amazing path that you didn't invite me on the path, but you certainly accelerated my path. And I want to talk about that a little bit. Now we can dive back into, when you were in corporate, or when you first got into real estate and you exited corporate and you got into real estate, and kind of how the spiritual journey came about. But I really want to talk about your consciousness and what that means for you, and kind of talk to our listeners about the importance of the inner work. Cool. Tell us a little bit
Yeah.
about that path and remind us of where you came from.
Well, it's you go. Everybody's different on how they remember and do things in their life. I'm one of those guys that I struggle to remember my past. So I think I'm gonna be remembering as we talk here. So it may not go in any great chronological order or whatever. My original partner in the real estate business, his name was Jim Stigemeyer. Jim was a wonderful friend of mine. But
And he's the one who introduced us.
that's true. Interesting connections,
That's
right?
awesome connection.
But that dude can remember anything. He can remember what he was doing when he was 4 years old, and those things like that. I don't remember the past that well, so I don't know why that is. Do you remember the past well?
I remember some parts of the past. I don't remember 4 years old, but I remember being 4 years old. But I don't remember what was going on when I was 4.
So I'm going to try to recall how I got on this journey, but it may not be 100% accurate. It'll be what it is, right? So I think let's talk just a little bit. I do recall at times when I was a kid meditating in my bed at home all by myself. I was probably, 8 or 10 or 12 years old. Do you remember doing that all when you were a kid?
No, not at all.
I don't know I didn't know what I was doing when I was a kid when I was doing that, but I do remember doing that at times, kind of feeling my body and just experiencing what's going on inside my body. I just did that a few times. I have a few memories about that, but for the most part, my childhood and my early adulthood, and when I say my early adulthood, I think I kind of got on the spiritual path sometime around 2006 or 7. So I was basically 40 years old. 39, 40 years old is when I kind of got on the path. So I spent a good chunk of my life not not knowing this stuff. I was kind of unconscious to, the spiritual path. But what got me on it was I went through a period of time that was very challenging in our real estate business. And it was what most people think about as the great financial crisis, or 2008 time period. It actually started just a little bit before that for the real estate people. So it kind of started for me in late 2006 and kind of went through 2007, 8, 9. And during that period of time, I was very close to going bankrupt, going broke. I had a real estate business at the time. We had a decent number of single family rentals in St. Louis. And my identity, I guess I'll say, was a little bit tied to having success as a real estate investor. And when I was struggling, I was losing my identity. I was failing, and those things kind of got me into a bit of a state of depression. And I was, for whatever reason, I was talking to a friend of mine. He probably doesn't even know this. His name's Troy Pratt. I don't talk to Troy very often, but Troy kind of encouraged me to start looking into the spiritual world. And the very first, the first one or two, I'm curious what your first one or two spiritual books were that you read. But for me, it was The Way of the Peaceful Warrior by Dan Millman. You know that book?
I do very well.
And The Celestine Prophecies. Did you ever read that book?
I have.
Those are like the introduction for me into the spiritual world. Troy recommended those for me, and I read them, and then I was talking to him a little later about it, and he encouraged me to reach out to a friend of his named Ayana McConan. And Ayana's since passed, but she was I call it a spiritual coach. She helped me to get an understanding of what I was going through and how to get through it. So she started teaching me different release techniques. She was a big EFTer. You know what EFT is?
So, tapping, where you tap all over your body.
Yeah.
I've done a lot of tapping too.
I did a lot of tapping during those days. I tapped so much. I think
under your arm.
I bruised my face. I bruised my arm. Bruised my chest. I remember some days I'd be driving down the road and I'd have this negative thought in my head, so I'd start beating on my face.
This beating's going to make all of it go away. And then when it didn't work, you beat harder, right? You just hit harder because more intensity just means it's going to.
I found relief from it. So
Yeah,
I think that's why I kept doing it, is because I found relief from it. Honestly, I haven't done that in years.
Well, I think there's a lot of methods to it, and it's really the intention behind the method, not necessarily the method.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
I agree with that. So anyway, that's kind of what got me on the journey a little bit. Another thing kind of happened at the same time. This was kind of going, parallel time periods. But I mentioned Jim Stigma earlier. Jim and I went to a conference in Dallas, Texas for real estate. And at that conference, there was a guy named T. Harbecker. And Harv, the conference was put on by Robert Allen, but Harv, he was just a little side speaker there. But Jim really connected with him, which was amazing to me because I didn't necessarily connect with him that much that day. But he was talking about how to change your mindset around money. And for whatever reason, Jim really connected with him. So we bought tickets for like a couple weeks later in Chicago at an event called the Millionaire Mind Intensive. I think that's what it was called. Yep. We went up there, and that kind of I thought we were going to go learn about money, but we actually, Harv is so sneaky. He would get you in with the money, but it was all about spiritual growth, all about letting go of all of the challenges you have in your life. So that's kind of that. Both meeting with Ayana and meeting with Harv, they were kind of all happening at about the same time. And at the same time, I was like going broke too. So
And buying tickets to Chicago.
Yeah, that's right.
But it was a pretty good investment.
It was great. You know, we went up to Chicago to the Millionaire Mind Intensive. I just remember really digging into some of my challenges that I was having in my mindset around money. We ended up buying some additional stuff with him, and we went out to some other courses. Like the first one we went out to was a warrior camp. Where at warrior camp, you know, we learned how to be strong and kind of push your way through things. You can accomplish way more than you think you can. And so he had us climbing mountains and doing all kinds of crazy things to prove to us that we had to walk fire. Have you ever done that?
No.
It's crazy. But anyway, the next camp after that was Wizard Camp. So it was kind of like matching, you know, you can do more than you think you can. Your mind prevents you from, your body is able to do way more than your mind will allow. You know, it's training yourself to not listen to your mind and go beyond what it thinks you can do. The next camp was Wizard Camp, where that was all about manifesting things, you know, through meditation and things along those lines. So he would match, you know, you can do more than you think you can you can do it with ease and grace, and you don't have to like struggle, you know, you can do it easily.
It's beautiful. Inner world, outer world.
Inner world, outer world.
One focused on the inside, one focused on the outside.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
So they got me introduced to the concepts, but I really didn't know what the hell I was doing from those boot camps and those early things. But it got me started on a path that, like I said, this was 2006, 2007, that time period. And I've been on this spiritual journey then for close to 20 years now, 19 years. You know, it's a journey. You just keep going, keep digging. You keep finding other stories that you have that hold you back in life.
So what is, when you talk about the spiritual journey, what is it? What are you doing, right? What's the core of spiritual work?
That's a good question. I would say it's creating more awareness around around your thoughts, and not being attached to your thoughts, or being, you know, we both just recently read Mickey Singer's book, The Surrender Experiment,
for the 15th time.
Right. Early in that book, he talks about this voice in your head. You're familiar with this voice.
I know that voice well.
Do you remember when you first were introduced to this voice?
And I didn't even understand it was there until I heard it one time.
Yeah.
Then when you hear it, you can never unhear it.
I don't really know that I was aware of the voice until I started going to Harv's stuff, and Ayana was coaching with me. I think for the first 40 years of my life, I don't think I was really aware of it. I mean, you kind of know that there's a voice in there talking to you, but I felt like I was that voice.
I just thought it was me.
Yes.
I just thought it was me talking to myself.
Yes. So spirituality for me, and I'm just defining it out loud here while we're talking, but it's about understanding that isn't who you are.
It's not.
There's more to you than just the thought that you have in your head, or that voice that's talking to you.
That's not you at all.
No.
That's not you at all, unless you use your mind. Right. The mind is a tool.
It
so
is.
Most of the time we unconsciously yield to the voices in our head.
Yeah.
And we think that's us, but and it's not. These thoughts happen to us. They're not us. But we could actually utilize our mind to problem solve. Yeah. And that's when the you that you are, the person that you are, is actually using the mind as a tool. Yeah. It's like the difference between when someone thinks or someone uses a hammer or believes that they are the hammer.
Right.
Right. They're not the hammer. They are the person using the hammer to 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 do something, right? And that's just like the mind.
Yeah.
But when you think you're your thoughts, if you're just sitting watching television, and the only reason I say that is because there's a big television right behind there. If you're sitting here and inside the mind, you're thinking, we need a snack. You know what? We're not going to get a snack. We're already too fat. We should really run. Yeah, but running, that's so hard. But we should probably maybe weight lift. And you've got these things that are just happening in this spiral of thoughts. You know, when you believe that that's you, it's like you're believing that you're the hammer in that metaphor. And that's when there's just these barrage of thoughts that are happening. And I remember in my first book, The Imposter in Charge, I talked about sitting in meditation, and I didn't have income, and I was sitting in meditation, and Christmas was coming. And I remember the barrage of thoughts. How, we're going to fail our girls. They're going to think we're a failure. We're not going to have any presents. There's not going to be any presents. They're going to think I'm a bad dad. How are we going to eat?
Were you conscious of those thoughts, or were those just thoughts that were happening?
That's when I started realizing that these thoughts were happening. And that was one of the first times that I saw the madness that was happening inside of the mind. And I'm watching it, and I'm witnessing it, and I'm not doing it.
That's what spirituality is right there.
It's separating those two.
Yes. So let's unpack that a little bit.
Same thing with beliefs and
stories
stories and emotions. It's the same thing. It's the separation between that. Now, let's unpack it.
All right. So I think, at least for me, for most of my first 40 years of my life, I had that voice talking to me throughout the day. And first of all, let's talk about this. Does your voice ever shut up?
It does.
It does. How do you... I would say that my voice talks to me almost all the time. So when can you quiet the voice?
So when if I bring my awareness into my body, the voice quiets.
Okay.
If my mind's in if my awareness is on my mind, usually it'll just start spewing.
Gotcha.
But if I bring my awareness into my body and become fully present, and the mind quiets. And the spiritual journey, and this is my take on the spiritual journey, it's been increasing the amount of time that my awareness is in a place that quiets the mind over a course of time, and that's when peace really starts to set in.
I like that. That's a good thing. I'll say it similarly but slightly differently. I'm similar to you, where I can slow down the voice or quiet the voice by getting very much present in my body and so forth. But there's also the part of my day where part of spiritual awareness for me, or growing as a spiritual being, has been, I still have the voice that talks on a regular basis, but I don't pay as much attention to it, or I'm not as attached to it as I used to. There was a big part of my life where the voice controlled me. And when we talk about the voice is basically also just the mind. It's the same thing.
Yep.
And so
the ego, the unconscious part of your mind.
And it just goes, it always talks. It kind of narrates your day. And it's kind of, I kind of like to relate it to, a computer system, but it's kind of running our lives. And if you think about, you don't have to necessarily consciously digest your food. Your body just does that, right? So that's a program that your body has. Well, your mind also has lots of programs in it.
Programming and conditioning, yep.
Yes. So, part of spiritual awareness is, in my opinion, is number one, becoming more aware that what the mind is versus what you are.
Sure.
And, if you relate this to what we'll call personal growth here, when I was more unconscious and my mind just talked to me a lot, I had a lot of negative stories.
Absolutely.
That the mind just told, like when I was having financial difficulty there, my mind kept telling me, I'm going to go broke. I'm going to go broke. I'm going to go bankrupt. People are going to hate me because, I'm not the successful real estate investor that everybody thinks I. So that's what the mind was telling me. But as you can separate yourself from the mind and you can start to reprogram your, the stories that to tell yourself.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
I would agree. And I'm sitting here thinking, as you're talking about that, you were in a financial crisis.
Yeah.
And you were, at times you talk about you were a week away or days away from bankruptcy.
Yeah.
And I remember the times where I had strong income and I had strong savings, but the mind still said the same thing.
Well, okay. And it's probably, I don't know, we're just talking out loud here, but I'll say it this way. I'm not sure this is right, but I think one of my greater desires has always been to have success, financially, and, maybe be thought of as a successful business person. I think maybe for you it's a little different. What do you view? What are your stories around success or happiness?
Well, the word success to me really didn't come into my life until you.
Okay.
Like you were the first person, not to introduce the word, but that I was around who really wanted to be successful.
Yeah.
And the way I see it, wanting to be successful in my mind, this might not be true for you. Right. It's more about seeking approval than anything.
Yeah.
So for me, it was always about security. It was never about approval. Yeah. It wasn't about how people saw me. It was about, could I keep my material lifestyle going, and could I continue to increase the amount of material comfort that I experienced? And the negative voices in my mind told me that I was always on the verge of losing it all.
Yeah.
So no matter how much, like the titles kept getting bigger, the income kept getting bigger, the net worth kept getting bigger, the bank account kept getting bigger, but the voice got even louder that we're about to lose it all. And that's what, at one point I was 300 pounds and suicidal and drinking at toxic levels because that voice got so loud, I couldn't stand it anymore.
So you used the food and the alcohol to try to quiet
the voice? Yeah, it was a distraction technique, but I didn't know that until afterwards, right? Until I understood the voice. Oh, I've been trying to quiet that thing my whole life.
Yes.
But this is why, you sit in front of, and I'll go back to the television, you're sitting there and let's say you just had a good day of closing deals and of sales, and your income is strong, and maybe your portfolio is growing, and you've got a funnel full of potential deals, and then that voice says, but what if next week they all go away?
Yeah.
And then you find yourself going from that place of kind of fulfillment and joy and success to suddenly you're on your laptop looking for your next deal.
Yeah.
Because that voice is running the show, not the spirit, the soul, right? Yeah. I like to say you have a mind, you have a body, but you are the awareness in this thing. You are the awareness who's wearing a meat suit, who has a supercomputer attached to this neck, right? You are not the supercomputer and you are not the meat suit. You are the awareness, the spirit, the soul within. You're the soul in control. But there's a lot of people, and I was one of them, and so are you, that identified as the voice and as the body.
Yes.
The body being the emotional state sometimes, and the mind being the thoughts. But there's beliefs contained in these that are also running the show. And if you're in a place of having plenty and you are successful and you are wealthy, but then you find yourself listening to that voice that's saying it's all about to go away, and you find yourself working when you have everything that you need, then you're letting the mind run your show. The soul in control isn't who you're identified as. You're identified as the mind.
Right.
And the spiritual journey for me has been about becoming less of the body and mind and becoming more about the soul, more of and as the soul in control.
Totally agree. And that's where happiness is.
It is. It's where peace is as well.
When peace and happiness, I agree with that. When you haven't let go of the attachment to the mind, you're going to find happiness when you're getting what you want. Which for me, I'm a real estate investor, and when I buy a house and I successfully sell it and make good money, I'm happy.
Sure.
But then 2 weeks later, I'm trying to find that next deal, and it's not coming. I'm upset again. I'm unhappy. I'm bummed out. Where if you can separate yourself from those stories and you can become aware of who you really are rather than being attached to the mind, it's not all about that next deal or that next, girlfriend or big paycheck or house or whatever.
Comma, zero,
Right.
whatever it is.
You can find your natural state of happiness, your natural state of peace. And that's what, spiritual growth is all about for me, is finding, that permanent state of happiness.
Now talk about this. And I know the answer to this, but I want to make sure we all know this.
Okay.
Do you believe you can only have spiritual peace or wealth, or spiritual peace and wealth?
Well, I think you can have both. And I think it's actually, if you have true spiritual peace, it's super easy to have wealth, I think. There is a lot of, I don't know, I think you have a term for them, but the spiritual people, the woke and broke, is that what you call them?
Woke and broke.
Woke and broke.
Yeah, the woke and broke, where their eyes are wide open, and by listening to their language, you would think that they're completely conscious, but they're always chasing money because they don't allow money to come into their lives.
Well, my definition of the woke and broke would be, they're people that talk the spiritual talk, but they don't do the work, and therefore, they're not getting rid of their stories. And when let's talk about doing the work.
Sure.
What does that mean? Because we all are born and we go through childhood and we're living wherever we do. For me in America, we have our culture that we have and the school systems that we go through and our friends and our religions or whatever. We get all these programs. We're all programmed up, and those programs will unconsciously run until you do something, create some effort to what I call doing the work of letting go of those programs. So, the more you can let go of the programs, the beliefs, that you have, I'd even say the emotions that you have, the more you can let go of those things, the freer you're going to be, the more happy you're going to be. So let's just talk about some of the ways to do that. So meditation, I think, has been big for both of us.
Absolutely, still is.
Yes.
It's not just a past thing; it's a daily thing for me. And you too.
Same. I started, I guess I'll call it a morning routine. I think it was somewhere in that 2006-07 time frame when I started a morning routine. Or at least incorporated meditation into my morning routine. I might have had an exercise routine before that, but I started spending a period of time every morning meditating. When I first started, I've talked about this before. I got 5 kids, blended families, so 3 step kids and 2 of my own, one with the ex and one with the current wife. So yours, mine, and ours.
There you go.
I didn't say that very well, did I?
You did fine. Blended family, a little mix of everything.
But in 2006, when I started this, I guess our kids would be been between 4 and 14 years old. So our household was super busy. So for me, what I would do is I had a closet in my bedroom. Just a little walk-in closet. So I had a chair in there, and every morning I would go sit in that closet because it was the only peaceful place in my house.
Right. Now you've got a lot of peace, don't you?
I do. Everybody's gone, growing up, so it's changed.
No closets anymore, but you still find a way to get in the closet.
I do.
You still like your closet. They're just bigger.
That's right. But anyway, I started by meditating, 15, 20 minutes just in my closet every morning, and then I had a kind of like, I'm going to say, an affirmation routine, things along those lines, a gratefulness routine, things along those lines that helped me to create more awareness, slowly but surely over time. And, my meditation routine has grown over the years. It's not uncommon these days where I spend about 2 hours a day in meditation in one form or another.
Yeah.
And so how about you? How's your meditation routine been?
Sometimes with 2 hours, you want more?
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Me too. And I know. I mean, I don't. I guess at this point I wouldn't sit straight into. I haven't in a while sat straight in 2 hours, but throughout the day I probably get more than that.
Yeah.
You know, wherever I get 10 minutes to nip or tuck a little meditation or a little silence and stillness in. Just this morning I was sitting here in this seat actually.
Yes.
Looking out this window, and it was like I woke up at 5 a.m. and I came out here and I had a couple hours to myself, and I just love that. And then you went for a walk. We kind of talked a little bit, and you went for a walk, and I sat outside and had some more time. So to me it's precious, and the meditation, it creates peace. It creates peace and harmony in the space, but the greatest attribute of meditation is getting in and finding the stories and finding the beliefs and feeling the things that are in there that are disrupting the harmony and peace, and actively working to let them go. And we can let them go.
Let's talk through the different forms of meditation, because I think what you're talking about there is more of a contemplative type of meditation. Would you agree with that?
So I would say there's a couple kinds of meditations. The one that we're talking about, where you just sit in silence and stillness and just be, call it consciousness meditation.
Okay.
That's my label for it.
Okay.
Consciousness meditation, where you're literally just sitting in meditation and you're just creating space for peace to ensue.
So one way to do that is just by paying attention to your breath.
Yep.
Your in breath, your out breath.
Or getting into your body somewhere.
Yeah, I would say that's a second one, but maybe they're one and the same to a certain extent. But so let's talk about the second one, the way you're defining it.
So let me go back. One thing, when we say the breath or the body, the breath is the body.
Okay.
So you're either in your mind or you're in your body, or you're in the outside world. You're never into it at the same time. So your awareness can only be in one place at a time. You're either present, and presence is being in your body, or you're not. You're either in the present moment. So
there's probably multiple ways to get present in the body.
Yes.
One way would be to pay attention to your breath, your in breath and your out breath. And that's an entire meditation all in itself. If you want it to be. You can add maybe some sound to that if you wanted to. I think creating a little sound can quiet your mind also.
Sure.
You agree with that? Probably, I'm going to say one of the most effective meditations for me over the years has been essentially a body scan, where I'm putting my attention on different parts of my body, and eventually the entire body all in one instance. Do you do much of that?
And I, even at my intensives and retreats, it's one of the first things I do when I leave meditation. I do a full body scan with people to bring themselves to, and invite them to let go of any struggle, stress, agitation that's in these different parts of their body. So bringing them to a place of relaxation, most of which they've never experienced before.
Yeah. I think for me, that's probably been my number one favorite type of meditation that I've consistently done over many, many years. So let's talk about contemplation for a sec, because contemplation in my mind is you're sitting in a meditative state, but then thoughts come up.
You're using your mind.
You're using it. That's
You're
right.
using your mind. There's difference between meditation and contemplation. You're actively using your mind to get into some space to rid yourself of something.
Yeah. So let's talk through how that happens. So have you ever been sitting in contemplation and a thought comes up and you start to analyze that thought? And you go, holy smokes, this is the dumbest thing ever. Things like that. Yeah. Have you realized some, a story that you have, a program that you have that you just notice it when you're contemplating, and you're able to realize that it's, for me, laughter is one of the best ways to let go of stories. So often I'm sitting in my little closet in the basement that I have in my O'Fallon house. And I'm contemplating on something, and all of a sudden I realize this program that I have, and I just start laughing my ass off.
Yeah.
And that's one of the best release ways for me to reprogram myself, you know.
Ayana used to make you laugh a lot too.
You
That's why you really enjoyed working with Ayana.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you do contemplation? Anything?
Yeah, look at. I mean, in order to understand how I use it, we have to understand a couple other things.
Okay.
So, one of the tenets of our relationship, and one of the tenets of the things that we teach, because we're here in Sedona, we're gonna over the next couple of days, we're gonna have a workshop called the Game of Money, and it's to teach how to create wealth through spirituality. So that's one of the reasons we're here. But if you think about the creation process, okay, I'm just going to say the creation process: clarity, certainty, and commitment. Okay, we've talked about the 3 C's a lot, all on this podcast. When you get really, really clear about what you want in this world, okay, and let's say you want to have a $3 million home in Sedona, Arizona. You want to have that home. And probably if you get clear about wanting to have that home, one of the first thing that's going to happen is that there's going to be this voice that comes up and says, you can't have it.
Yeah.
Or that's impossible. Or that's not available to us. Or we can't do that. Or that's just a dream. You're not good enough, whatever. There's all this stuff that comes up. Now, what you did is you got really clear about what you wanted with your mind.
Mm-hmm.
You used your mind. And now you're starting to watch all of these stories. And then through contemplation meditation, my favorite form of contemplation meditation, it's starting to use my mind to dispel those beliefs and stories and choose different ones.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like I can provoke, going back, you can't do that, and say, where did that come from? Oh, it came from this story that I have that I'm not good enough. And it's like in that moment my experience is when I see that, I can start to feel it in my body where that story lives.
Interesting.
I can start to feel where that emotion is stored. I can start to feel where
does that typically have?
Mickey, in various parts.
Like your elbow or your thumb or your gut?
Could be in my gut, could be in my perineum, it could be in my shoulder, it could be, and Mickey Singer calls these thorns, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
in the surrender experiment, he calls them thorns. That's these stuck balls of energy, these traumatic energy that are in your body. And when you get in there, I can use my mind to provoke and find that emotion and start to unleash it and start to let it go. And sometimes my experience, not saying everybody's experience is the same as mine, my experience is when I start to provoke that, I'll start to feel my body start to let it go, and my body will start to twist and convulse a little bit. And over, a period of time, it's okay, it just relaxes. Like that little ball of emotion, that little traumatic samskara, right? That thorn just let go, because I used my mind to go into my body and find it where it was living. And I started to unleash it and harness it or release it.
I've never had the convulsions or whatever you were just talking about there, but I know when I've released it because I literally feel a lightness. You can just kind of feel
Absolutely.
You can tell, a heaviness versus just a lightness. Just a that to me, I feel that. I don't know how to describe it other than a lightness. I just feel the energy just kind of come, like, you can feel the energy of, I don't know, anger, right? You feel that?
It's heavy.
And you can feel the energy of peace or joy, right? And it's a lighter energy, right?
And what happens is when you let go of anger, something higher comes in and takes its place.
Yeah.
And if you look at lower level emotions, shame and guilt and anger and grief and apathy, all lower level, really heavy energies, as you're releasing these from your body, you're actually lightening the load of the backpack that you're carrying around, right? Of all the samskaras, of all the events, of all the traumas, of all the the stories that you have, the beliefs that you have. And as you lighten that load, your life gets easier, right? Your body gets easier or lighter. Your aura, your energy gets lighter, and from there, you're more nimble and agile in the world, right? And you're more capable of creating what you want.
Yep. But in the moment when I'm able to release something, just like you talked about, I feel that lightness.
Absolutely.
That's what it's, and if you really let it go,
Mm-hmm.
it really doesn't come back. Now, sometimes you let go part of it, like,
Yeah.
I was, for me, I was a real estate investor for many years, and my intention was to buy a house, one house a week, and if I didn't buy a house for, I'm going to say 10 days or 12 days, I started notice I had stories like, you're never going to buy a freaking house ever again in your entire damn life.
It's funny how this whole thing works. Being a human is so freaking entertaining, man.
Yes, but when I would sit in meditation, I noticed myself saying that to myself, and when I would, sometimes you get, for me, sometimes I could let it go by saying, well, dude, I bought a house almost every week for the last 8 years in a row. What changed over the last 2 weeks? And I'm never going to buy a house again.
Right.
So you can kind of like negotiate with yourself or
all
whatever.
the houses are, and this is massaging new beliefs, right? This is mentally contemplating, massaging new beliefs into your, into your skull or into your body, but it's all beautiful. I want to tell a story. I had a mastermind retreat, the Inner Wealth Mastermind retreat. We just had a retreat in Gatlinburg back in October. And there was somebody on, not really the hot seat, but I was doing some work one-on-one with somebody, well, in a group setting, but I was focused in on them. And they had these stories, and we started diving into her stories. And I kept getting deeper and deeper in her stories. And when we started really getting into the depths of the stories, she started feeling the emotion of those stories, and she started feeling the stress and the agitation of the stories. I know you didn't see this event, but you've seen this before.
Yep.
As you get into the story, you really see what you're dealing with, the darkness that you're dealing with. And this one was dark. You could see the tension start to take place and surface in her body. You could see her face start to turn red. You could see her shoulders like cringed up, and you could see her body starting to, everything surfaced, like all this emotion, this pent up raw emotion surfaced. And then I asked, we're in Sedona, Arizona, and there's something called the Sedona method. And I literally took her on a journey, and I said, can you release this? And she said, yes. I said, will you release this? And she said, yes.
She was ready.
She was ready. And I said, if so, when? And she said, now. And you could literally watch her body let go of everything. And you could literally, in that moment, watch her face turn a different color.
Yeah.
You saw, and we were in a room, and there was 25, 30 people in this room. You watched her shoulders let go.
Yeah. Everybody could see it.
Everybody could see it. It was obvious that she let this stuff go. And in that moment, when she let that go, and every cell in her body relaxed, it was almost like there was a gasp of air in the room, because everybody got to see the potential and the capability of physical release.
Yeah.
What we did in that moment is we got to a story, we dug as deep as possible, we extracted and harvested as much raw, pent up emotion, those samskaras, all those thorns, we got as much to the surface as possible. I invited her to release, and she did. And then we did about 3 or 4 rounds of that until, like, when we got down, she's like, okay, I've had enough.
Yeah.
She was exhausted and she was done. And her life has never been the same.
Yeah.
And she points to that moment and say, that was liberating. It was freeing. She had been carrying around a story, and she had been shutting down and shutting off people from a protection mechanism, as a defense mechanism for her whole life. And in that moment, she let go of those stories and the need to protect and defend herself. And it just allowed her to have better relationships, more harmonious relationships, and just a beautiful, beautiful moment. Have you seen those types of things before?
I felt those things before.
Yeah.
Yes, that's been my journey, and I had a similar experience, and I've had that. I don't know. I'm going to say at least dozens, but probably hundreds of times over the last 20 years. Where I've had a story, and I've found either me personally just working on with myself, just doing the work myself, or with a coach, which
Absolutely.
I've done both.
Both, yeah. Me too.
And, I've had big releases like what you're describing there. That's a big release.
It is a very big one.
But I don't know who you're talking about, but whoever you're talking about, she'll probably have more and more over time.
And they might get smaller and smaller
Yeah.
because there's less. It's kind of like what Bryan was saying. There's always another level. It's kind of like the way I look at it is, you ever gone to a buffet and you see the stack of plates? You can only see the top plate, but when you take the top plate, you ever seen that thing where the plates are like suppressed or pushed down into the, and you take the plate and the next one pops up.
Yeah.
You don't know how many plates are under there. You just know you're taking the next layer.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like release, right? Spiritual release.
And we're letting go of stories, letting go of some scars, as you just talked about how Mickey the singer describes it. And the more you let go of, the higher your energy, or your, there's lots of different words to use for this, but the higher your energy comes up, or the higher your consciousness comes up, or the higher, more self-awareness you have. And a lot of people are interested in how to have a better life in this physical world, we'll say. So let's get back. You started mentioning the 3 C's earlier. So the first C, you kind of mentioned about getting clarity on what you want. I like to use the word intention, getting a very clear intention on what you want to manifest. Step number 2 of that is all about, and we use different words, but it's all about letting go of all these samskaras, all these stories that we have. The more these stories that you can let go of, the faster you can manifest anything you want in this life.
And the reason I call it certainty is because the opposite of certainty is
uncertainty.
And in uncertainty is lack of trust, it's doubt, it's fear, it's am I good enough? There's some self-rejection in there, and it creates this, what I like to call psychological distance. That's really not there. It's just inside of you. The resistance is in there. So when I say certainty, clarity, certainty, and commitment, certainty is just, the flip side is getting in and seeing where you're uncertain that this thing's going to happen, right? And becoming and letting go all that go. And as you do, you become certain. It's not an if, it becomes a when. Because of the intention, it moves from a desire to an intention. A desire, there's a gap. And with an intention, you never lose touch with the present moment. Where the desire, you put this thing in the future and now you're chasing it. With an intention, you still live present, but you're living present as if it's already true.
Yes. So create an intention, whatever.
Clarity.
Get clarity around that intention. Let go of all the stories that you have, the negative stories around.
Recognize and let go of them. Certainty.
Okay. Step number 3. For me, it's always been receiving, which I think your word is commitment. We're saying the same thing, but if you get intention, you let go of all the issues, then be ready to receive. And receiving to me is, you're going to have an inspiration. I don't know. We could talk about a specific example. Well, let's come up with a specific example.
And in commitment, to me, I have 3 parts in commitment. And this is where it gets a little. I want to unpack commitment just a second. 3 parts to commitment. 1, take inspired action. Number 2 is be patient in the process. Because if you're not patient, then you're uncertain. So it's remain patient in the process. It's not your timing. We're not talking about your timing. You're responsible for the what, but not for the how or the when. So it's be patient in the process, and then when it shows up, because it will, be willing to receive. Take delivery.
Yes, and receiving. I've seen so many people fail on the receiving part. I was going to try to think of a good example, but I can't think of a good example here yet. But
you just told me one. Yes,
it's kind of a long story, though. I don't know if we want to go into that right now. But I'll use one of the things that I've manifested in my past, and we'll use that. We can talk about what receiving means. But during COVID, I wanted this car. It was a 2022 Audi RS7. It's an incredible car.
It's a race car.
It's a race car.
I get to drive it tomorrow.
That's right. And you and I and a buddy of ours, Keith, were on Main Street in St. Charles having breakfast one day, and there's this dude that has an office down there that had this car, and I drove by it. I thought, gosh, that freaking car is awesome. I want that car. I intend to have that car. And we talked about it.
You took us and we stood in front of it.
We stood in front of it. That's right. And this was during COVID when you couldn't get any cars, right? So, so this was in 2022. So it was a brand new car, and the only way to get it was to order it, and you'd have to wait like 9 months or something dumb like that. And it's a $150,000 car, and I didn't want to plop down $150,000 and wait 9 months for a car to show up that I'd never ever drove in my life. So I put out the intention to have one show up, that I could go drive, and if I liked it, buy it. So I set out that intention, right? You remember this?
I do.
And then I just let go of any, what kind of stories can come up with that? Well, there's no cars available. How are you going to get one? Or the only way to get one is to order it and wait 9 months,
or everybody else's stories, right?
Right. Everybody's stories there. So I let go of all those stories, and I just emailed all the Audi dealers in St. Louis and told them what I was looking for. And it wasn't, but I don't know, maybe 2 months later, something like that. Maybe not even that long.
I don't think it was that long.
Yeah. I got an email. It was on a Friday night. I got this email, said, hey, we had this guy that bought a 2022 RS7 and he sold it back to us this morning or this evening. You want to come get it? And so it took me like 1 second to say, hell yes.
How many miles did it have?
I forget. It was less than 100.
It was like 25. It was 25 miles. It was like new. It was he test drove it for you.
That's right. So anyway, so let's finish the story and then let's talk about it. So that was on a Friday night. So on Saturday morning, my wife and I drive down to the dealer, and car's sitting there. It's freaking beautiful. As a matter of fact, it's the exact one that we saw on Main Street.
Yeah.
Same color, same wheels, same everything.
You exactly specified exactly what you wanted in your email to the dealership.
Yeah.
Right. And this is the exact car that showed up.
That's exactly right. And so I bought it. That was the intention. The salesman at the dealer told me that this dude, about I don't remember, it was 6 months ago, ordered the car. He got it. He took it home. He bought it, took it home, sat it in his garage for a couple weeks. And then he decided, I don't know why, but he decided he didn't want it anymore. So he brought it back to the dealer, sold it back to the dealer. So like you said, it had 25 or 50 miles. It had very few miles on it. And so I got exactly what I wanted, which is practically a brand new as a 2022 car. But I got it used because somebody else bought it before me. I got to go down there and test drive it, which was one of the things that I wanted to do before I dropped 150 grand on a car. I wanted to test drive it. I drove it. I loved it. So I bought it. So, but I want to talk about the receiving part just a sec, because I see so many people that'll get an intention, they'll get really clear about it, they'll release on it a little bit, and then it'll show up, but then they don't receive it. And in this example, what that would mean is they go, oh shit, it's here. Now I got to pay $150,000 for this damn thing. I'm not going to do that. They back out, There's so many people that have it. It's right on your freaking doorstep, and all you have to do is say yes.
And I like the way I heard it phrased before. I think I'm going to use somebody else's words, that the universe wouldn't deliver it if you weren't ready to keep it.
That's right.
So if you would not have the resources or everything that you needed to keep it, you wouldn't have received delivery. It wouldn't have shown up.
I've seen so many people have that happen with girlfriends or boyfriends or whatever, like I've seen people that get very clear on what they want in a spouse or a mate or whatever, girlfriend, and they get super clear on it, they get released on it, and then she shows up, and then they start saying stupid things. Have you ever seen that?
Something to sabotage it. Yeah. Yep.
So anyway,
it's a beautiful thing, and I watched that whole race car story play out, and then when I tell the story, I tell it a lot more intensely. So, but anyway, there's
probably more fun when you tell it.
It is. It's a lot more fun, and like it's more dramatic.
Good.
So intense, but it's a lot of fun watching you. And I like that. I like to say that you are the most powerful person I know. And I'm not talking about, we just had an inauguration. I'm not talking about that kind of power. Like, I'm not talking about external power. I'm not talking about anything of having to do with authority. When I talk about personally powerful, that when you decide you'll have something, you'll have it. And it's not just because you have the finances to buy it. Like, you have manifested impossible things. You have materialized, and I don't love the word manifest, but you have materialized impossible things that were impossible to other people. But because you are so personally powerful, you are so certain about, I can have whatever I want in this world, you make it true because you live through that belief, where most people are living from the belief that I can't have what I want, or there's some resistance outside, or the economy has an impact, and politics has an impact, and all of these things.
Mike, let's talk through that for just a sec, because that is all true. Because today, I believe I can have anything I want in this life. And I believe any one of us can have anything we want this week. And for me, it comes down to, you got to prove it to yourself. So you got to prove it. You got to start by proving it to yourself with something small. The formula is the formula. It's a very clear formula, and we just described it, your 3 C's. It's a creation process. It's a very simple formula, but it's not easy. Just like
simple, but not easy. Yeah.
That's right. You gotta learn how to
practice.
You gotta learn how to create intentions, correctly. You gotta learn the letting go process so you can let go of anything that's resisting that.
Yeah.
And then you gotta learn the receiving process, and it's easier to practice it on something that you don't care as much about.
Sure.
So I did that. I practiced on little things, and then I got practiced on a little bit bigger things. And by this point in my life, I've manifested hundreds of things that are things that, I know they weren't coincidences. They were really, truly, brought into the existence.
Yeah, and let's talk about clarity for a second. And I mean, we already went through the 3 C's, but I want to come back to clarity, because here's where I, early in my journey, or even occasionally, I find myself going back to this space. But we say we want something, but we really don't want it. So four reasons that I think people want things. Okay. And I'll call them the 4 voices, because these are also the voices that are inside our mind at any given time. Right. 4 voices, four things. Oh, our video is not doing well. Insecurity. Fear of loss. Inadequacy. Not being good enough, trying to prove yourself. Insignificance, trying to feel like you matter. That's why you wanted to be a success, because you wanted to feel like you mattered, right? And inspiration. And sometimes what I found is, when I'm trying to materialize because of insecurity, inadequacy, and insignificance, these things they're much harder. There's so many more layers of stuff that I've got to work through, because I really don't want what I want. I just want it to patch up a hole. I don't want it because I want to experience it. I tend to want things in those situations because I'm taking on water and I'm just trying to patch the leak. Where if I patch the leak and now the boat's floating, now I can just like set sail. I can lift the sails instead of just trying to patch the hole. Does that make sense? And I never thought about it. That visual is, sometimes we're just trying to, we say we want something and it's really just self-preservation, or we're just trying to solve an internal conflict that really doesn't exist. So where you wanted a race car, did you need that race car?
No.
Were you less of a person without that race car?
No.
Did your life suck because you didn't have that race car?
No.
Did you want that race car to prove something to someone else?
No.
Did you want them to see you in a different way?
No.
Did you want it to keep you from going bankrupt?
Nope.
Did you want it to make sure you could pay your bills next month?
Nope.
Sometimes we want things for those elements.
Yes.
And you wanted it because you wanted to experience sitting in that race car driving fast. Is that true?
I just wanted their car. Yes.
Yeah.
I thought it was cool, and I needed a car at the time.
But you've also gotten a lot of speeding tickets because
A
you
few.
like to go fast, don't you?
That's true. That's true. But I think what you're saying though is good though. Like for example, I'm not sure if this is what you were getting at, but let's play this game for a little bit longer. If you are, I was in the house buying business for years, and I made a living out of buying houses. And if I was struggling with buying a house, and it was important for my family for put food on the table and to pay the rent and those type of things, it might be harder
Yes.
than practicing. But I very clearly remember the very first thing I intentionally manifested was baseball tickets to the Cardinals game. Something that didn't really matter that much, but I did it because me and Grant Hickman were talking about it. We decided let's just have a little contest and see who could manifest them the fastest. There wasn't anything important about it. We couldn't buy it.
Yeah.
So we both intended it. And it was just like a couple days later, a banker of mine that I knew called me up and said, the bank had 4 tickets. You guys want them for next week's game? And that's when I started to think, holy shit, I did manifest that. And, and so proving it yourself with little things that don't matter, practice on that kind of stuff. Yeah. And then start practicing on stuff that matters, because then there's less emotion involved.
Early on in my coaching business, I wanted 10 clients and $10,000. You remember this?
Yeah.
10 clients. That was my first real intention that I set. 10 clients, $10,000. And as I worked the process and let go of the doubt and the worry and the fear and anxiety and the lack of trust and all of that, the psychological distance, I guess I call it. As I let go of that, before long, I had 16 clients and 20K. I mean, it was it happened so naturally and so quickly. And in a lot of cases, I couldn't explain where people were finding me.
Yeah.
And it's not because my marketing was great, because I didn't have any marketing. It's not because I was an awesome salesperson, because I would just jump on a phone and I'd say, here's what I got. You want it or not?
Yeah.
And they would buy in. It was a lot easier than I ever made anything in my life. And here's the crazy part, is it worked.
Yeah.
And then I went back into fear mode a little bit, right? So, and this is the cycle that, we see it work, and sometimes then we lack trust in the next time that it's going to happen. Yeah. So we get off course until we surrender again. And that's where spiritual surrender comes in. Then we surrender again, and then we get back in the zone. Hey, what's the process? Clarity, certainty, commitment, get in the zone. And then the next iteration happens, right?
Just another reminder.
Yeah, just keep practicing.
We keep getting reminded. We're humans.
That's right. Is there anything that you left out?
I don't know. Did you enjoy the conversation?
I loved it. We could go on for forever. So no, it was awesome. The spiritual work isn't just to become an enlightened guru. The spiritual work isn't just to sit on the side of a mountain and be Buddha. The spiritual work isn't just to become this Zen master and just to have inner peace. The spiritual work is to become so personally powerful that when you want something from a place of intention, not desire, not lack, because desire is based on lack, not insecurity, inadequacy, insignificance, but inspiration, becoming powerful. Spiritual work is to become so personally powerful because you choose to have it.
Yeah.
You will.
Yeah,
and that's why I call my workshop Choose Your Destiny, not Chase Your Destiny, right?
I like that. For me, I would say quite a while ago, I don't remember exactly when this happened, my number one intention in life was to be happy. And I figured out that it's not about what you have. Happiness is an internal thing. It's letting go of the fears, the anxieties, the insecurities, all those things. So that was my number one intention, and has been for years, just to be happy, to have peace and joy in my life. But the side effect of that is that you can create the life that you want. For me, I love being out here in Sedona. I love real estate, so I created this stuff, says I'm happy, I'm at peace, but I still am a human being living here in this, having this human experience. So let's do something that we enjoy and have fun along the way.
and I guarantee there's somebody out in the world, probably millions of people, that maybe have what you have. in terms of a rental portfolio, in terms of, all the net worth, and they're working 100 or stressing out 100 times more than you are. And you've just done it from a place of peace and joy instead of stress and struggle. That is the spiritual work. That's what we're after. It's not about not having it.
Yeah.
It's having it in a way that's very inspired and not based on fear.
I love it.
And me too.
I think that's a good way to wrap it up.
I think so too. So we are out here I'm out here. Angie and I just went to New Orleans to celebrate a friend's engagement. Came here to be with Bryan for the Game of Money retreat in Sedona. Angie and I are going to Turks and Caicos next week. And the reason I'm saying this is, and in the meantime, I'm teaching people, I'm coaching people, still holding my mastermind, still holding my community calls, because Angie and I designed this life. This is an intentional life that we live.
We designed a beautiful life.
We designed a beautiful life. We don't work or enjoy, we work and enjoy. We enjoy and work, and it's all integrated. And it's only because we got clear about exactly what we wanted in our life and our lifestyle and the life that we wanted to live. And we are literally living the vision that we cast and that intention that we set years and years ago. It's just about getting clear about what you really want and letting all the rest go. So we're out here, Game of Money. We might have, this one's full, but we might have more in the future. But coming up on February 21st and 22nd, I have the next in-person Choose Your Destiny Vision Intensive, live intensive with me. And if Bryan was in St. Louis, he'd be there too. He said he's not going to fly in for it.
Come on out. It'll be awesome.
Yeah. Come on out to Sedona.
Or come to St. Louis to the intensive.
If you're interested in coming out and hanging out and doing this work, maybe not being with him, but coming out and doing this work, let's jam. But anyway, listen, this work works, right? This guy is a testament to it. And he screams it from the rooftops, right? And not only do I get to stay here and like do the Game of Money retreat with my best friend, I get to participate in his life and drive his sports car or his race car and live in his house and all kind of cool stuff and hike on trails, even though I hate hiking. Guys, anything's possible. All you got to do is get clear about what you want and be able to trust yourself, trust the universe, trust life that you can have it, because whatever you want for yourself, life wants for you. Do you believe that or not?
I do.
Check that belief. So do I. Love you guys. See you next week.